Hi, everybody. This is the first edition of the Kush Philosophy radio show. I am the Kush Philosopher from here in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Thanks very much for joining us. Let's just get right into the broadcast for today. Today we're talking about postmodernism and cannabis, a very little discussed, if really at all, connection and issue. Extremely important information. So let's just get started here in discussing it.
So what I think of postmodernism is something like this, and then I'll explain it more carefully after I give you this little story to try to explain it. Think of a person who has tried their whole life to gather information, figure out how the world works, and they've had numerous times where they changed their minds. For example, say in their 30s they accumulated all kinds of information about science and math and really thought they came up with a picture of the way the world worked, but then either some new discoveries came along or maybe they discovered some new things in some reading that overturned most of their ideas. So in other words, for example, say by analogy, if somebody's really into Newtonian physics in the early 1900s, and then Einstein comes along and shows that it has errors, somebody's going to go through a mental revolution because what they thought was gospel truth, they're going to realize isn't gospel truth. Then they may start wondering, well, what else do I think I know which isn't really gospel truth, but which I'm erroneously thinking is gospel truth? And say this happens to someone over and over. To give another analogy, say someone believes in the theory of expanding Earth, which used to be the dominant theory in geology until, 60 or 80 years ago or something. And then evidence came along to show that plate tectonics is the case. Now, I don't really know if there's been such evidence that really shows that plate tectonics is true and expanding Earth isn't, but I think a lot of academics think there is. I've looked at what they said. They think the continents line up and blah blah. But anyways, the point is here, imagine that you had the same reaction happen again, but what you thought was the case isn't the case. And say this can happen with religion too. You grow up being told, say, Christianity is correct, and you're just absolutely sure it is. Everybody tells you it is. All the people you're surrounded tell you it's true, and then you see something that flatly seems to go against Christianity, such as you find out that the Gospels were written, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John were written dozens of years after Jesus was alive. And that may make you think, well, wait a minute, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense compared to why didn't anybody tell me this before? It's just one example. It may make you start to question your religion. Say you get an anthropology degree, as I did. My undergraduate degree is in anthropology and philosophy, double major. And say you go through the whole degree, as happened with me, and you never study any of the pyramids. I got my degree from the University of New Mexico, really good anthropology department, but we never studied the pyramids. Well, why didn't we? That changes that, the ideas of evolution that we've been given, where, humans were chimpanzee-like creatures, and then evolved into Homo sapiens sapiens, and we came out of the last ice age and started to build cities and got more and more developed through time, and here we are now in emerging on the space age. Well, studying the pyramids, the Egyptian pyramids, the Mayan pyramids, there's the Giza pyramid in China, which I think is the biggest in the world. There's structures underwater off the coast of Japan, which are seem to be from the same era, et cetera, et cetera. You study these and you realize that, and also let's add in something like Baalbek, that temple. Humans didn't really know how to. We don't know how to build this stuff. The rocks are too big. They're all perfectly cut in place, and you can't even fit a credit card between them. They're so, perfectly in place, and they're heavier than any machines that we have now can lift. The rocks, to build these. Some of the rocks to build these structures, but they're supposedly built thousands of years ago. So the point here is that our picture of history we've been given even correct. So you start to question that. So I'm going over this kind of quickly. Of course, we can give more treatment and detail to all this, but I'm just trying to get to the point here. And the point is that what if somebody has this recurring over and over every time they get to what they think is right information and everybody else seems to think is right information, they keep finding out isn't correct information. Or we don't know for sure maybe it's correct information. There's always another possibility. Then you start to realize, do I really know anything at all? And you start to put together in your mind that the stories that everybody's telling you from science, history, the different academic accounts and so forth are just people's best attempt to give an account of reality with respect to whatever they're talking about in reality, history, science, whatever. And people, however, don't really know for sure, and the story changes through time. Best analogy I gave here is Newton to Einstein. There's, of course, many others. And in fact, is it the case that has any scientific theory, for example, ever really even held for more than a couple hundred years before being radically overturned or shown to be incomplete? So the point is that everything we hold now in our minds may be shown to be radically incomplete, partially incomplete to some degree, or just plain wrong. So what can we hold confidence in? And the idea is that maybe nothing. Maybe everything we're hearing from the math department, from the history channel, from the astrophysicists, to the ministers, to the lawyers, politicians, whomever, these are all just people's partial accounts, incomplete accounts of what they think reality is like. The key word there is partial. What postmodernists call these are narratives. People's stories they give you. They're trying to give you a story on what they think reality is like. You go to church, and they'll give you a story. People are so sure and confident that their story is correct. This is how reality is. Okay. Then you find out, well, there's some problems with that. We can't prove that it's exactly how things are. Maybe partially correct or something, but it's a partial story. And if it's partial, it's incomplete and it's not accurate. Okay, partial stories are not accurate stories. All right. What postmodernists say is that every account anybody anywhere in the world gives you is a partial account, is a partial narrative. All narratives are partial, the postmodernist says. So therefore, really all a narrative is someone's biases to some degree. Maybe they're not trying to be biased, but nevertheless, from their circumstances in life, where they come from and so forth, brings them to providing this partial account, which will be then a demonstration of their biases due to their circumstances and what brought them to this point in life to give you this account, whoever is giving you the account of reality that they are, whether it's the historian or the preacher or the Big Bang theorist or whatever. Okay, so what you're seeing then is a picture into someone's inner psyche, someone's beliefs, someone's prejudices and biases, someone's preferences and desires. You're getting a biography of the person rather than an account of reality. Let me read you a passage here from a book called Eclipse of Uncertainty, an introduction to postmodern fantasy by Lance Olson, Greenwood Press, where he discusses this very well. This is on page 3. I should like to emphasize that just as every narrative strategy suggests a metaphysical one, so too does every critical strategy. Through this optic, every piece of criticism becomes as well a piece of spiritual autobiography. Okay? It's a very good passage. He ties the idea that narratives are metaphysical as well. Metaphysical specifically referring to, something that's metaphysical is something that is not empirical, something we can't see with our eyes or experience with our senses, like the soul or God, say like a Christian type of God. Or now something like air, you might think, is that's you can feel air blowing on you, such as when the wind blows. So you have tactile sense experience that it exists, so it's not metaphysical, even though you can't see it. But narratives, being partial and coming from someone's spiritual autobiography, someone's inner persona and inner situation, is not an account of actual reality, the reality we can see. It's an account. It's a theoretical account, not based on what we can see. So therefore, it's a metaphysical account. So narratives in the world today are metaphysical. Now, let me give an example to show all these points, how this all works. I think the best example of all is maybe the Iraq War that supposedly was just completed by the U.S. military not too long ago. That was based on, Americans were told from 1991 or 2 all the way to 2003, well, still today maybe, 2011, that there's a nation that's a threat called Iraq, and there's imminent danger, so we must attack, and we, of course, the American military did at various times, and now then it's all over, and all the troops went to Afghanistan and elsewhere. Now the point here is that Americans never actually saw a threat. They were told about a threat through the mass media, NPR, Fox News, CNN, and so forth, but they never saw it. They just heard it without sense, having any sense experience for it. So it's metaphysical information. Whether it's true or not is a separate issue. Its specific form that it took on to the American populace through all those years was a metaphysical, non-scientific form. Okay, and in the process of that, many people changed their minds, stating that, well, I don't, in say 2005, a lot of people started protesting and saying, I don't know if we were right about this. So the narrative was incomplete and metaphysical, so nobody really knew if it was true or not. And a lot of people debated and argued. A lot of people were sure that it was right, sure that it was wrong, and so forth. But the point is nobody could really know with certainty because it was a metaphysical, partial narrative. And the world, nevertheless, proceeded forward, where huge numbers of people died and incredible amounts of money were spent and dramatic pain and suffering ensued, all based on a partial metaphysical narrative. This is what it is to live in a postmodern reality. Now, it appears that, I use an example here from the U.S. populace and the U.S. military, but this is the case if you're a rainforest shaman, if you're a Christian minister, if you're a Buddhist monk, if you're a Big Bang theorist, so forth. We don't know if our narratives are correct. The Big Bang theorist can't prove to you that there was a Big Bang because nobody has seen it. Nobody can look back that far through space-time. Okay, so it's a philosophical account, all right, just like plate tectonics. Now that may turn over into so what is not postmodern information? Something perhaps empirical. If you can directly see something, like I'm holding a pen in my hand here. See it? Here, there's the pen. Just banged against the microphone. That, do I want to say I'm not really sure if there's an object in my hand? I'm not going to go that far. Okay, so empirical information might be the only antidote to, if you